Some us from your meeting. We didn't the plastic policies put together, we can end it. For participants joining via Zoom, please note that we have translation. So please select the one that is please. For those of us joining us here at the venue, please log in via Zoom as well to use your headsets to listen to the translation. So we will be screening a QR code so that you could scan and log into Zoom. We are also recording this briefing and posting live on Facebook. So hello to everyone watching on Facebook. My name is Wu. I'm the African Regional Coordinator of the Direct. I'm based in Durban, South Africa, and I will be moderating this event and taking you through this amazing panelists and all of their perspectives here today. So today, our Global South Delegation will put forward the demands for a strong plastics treaty. These demands include addressing the entire life cycle of plastics. Plastics production, reduction, freezing of polymers and chemicals of concern, putting a stop to incineration and similar harmful technologies. Furthermore, we demand the limiting of toxic chemicals in plastics and we call for chemical transparency. We also call for a just transition, mandatory extended producer responsibility based on the zero waste priority. Moreover, we want a commitment to put regulations in place to operationalize policies, as well as pushing for more upstream methods and a robust handle mechanism for implementation and the inclusion of waste pickers, indigenous peoples, and frontline communities, underrepresented African, Asian, and SIP countries, women, and youth. At this time, I would like to again mention that this is a hybrid event, both in person here at Comfort Gardens Hotel in Nairobi, Kenya, and online. And with that, I would like to kick off this event by introducing our first speaker. Our first speaker today is Soledad Maria from the Asociación Nacional de Reguladores de Chile. And a just transition. Great to have you here with us. In some ways, we can guarantee the inclusion, integration, just transition, and accessibility of waste workers and frontline communities into the global plastic process. And what would you say a just transition looks like for waste pickers?
But first, we need to check if the order's working. Now should work. But the audio is working?
This is a very ambitious hybrid event, so thank you all for bearing with us as we prepare.
Hola, probando. Escucha el mundo. Ahora sí que se me ha... Aló, sí. Sí. Hola. Sí,
Okay.
Buenas tardes a todos y a todas. La verdad de las cosas es que uno de los puntos más complejos dentro de nuestro tratado, hemos tratado de vincular y hacer posible que se instale nuestra posición frente a este escenario, es uno de los conceptos más complejos que es la transición justa. ¿Y por qué es tan complejo? Porque cuando hablamos de los gobiernos, de los estados y del mundo privado, podemos dar cuenta que muchos hoy día están hablando de transición justa. Y antiguamente nadie ni siquiera escuchaba esa palabra, que es la transición justa. Para nosotros los recicladores de base, los waste picking, cuando hablamos de transición justa, hablamos de cosas muy simples y muy completas. Cuando hablamos de transición, hablamos de reconocimiento, hablamos de visibilidad, hablamos de integración y hablamos también de oportunidad. Cuando hablamos de transición justa, también hablamos de inversión, mejorar las condiciones de los recicladores, los waste pickers a nivel global es clave. Cuando hablamos de transición justa, hablamos también de cómo mejoran las condiciones sociales de parte de nosotros. Y cuando hablamos de transición justa, hablamos realmente de que hoy día los recicladores, los waste pickers, por primera vez, tienen una oportunidad tremenda para ser incorporados dentro de un tratado donde realmente nunca fuimos visibles. La transición justa no solamente tiene que ver con la transición justa climática, con la transición justa social, con la transición justa económica, con la transición justa tecnológica. Tiene que ver con mucho más que eso. Tiene que ver cómo miramos a estos hombres y mujeres, más de 20 millones en el mundo, que se han dedicado por tiempos, por 4 generaciones a nivel global, al tema de los residuos. El plástico hoy día es la oro, pero nosotros partimos reciclando chuleo, ropa, vidrio, cartón. Eso ha sido nuestra forma de ser parte de este proceso donde nunca hubo una oportunidad ni una transición justa. Hoy existe esa oportunidad. Y para nosotros en este tratado, la transición justa tiene que ser sumamente clara y obligatoria. No puede ser un principio de voluntades, tiene que ser obligatorio y generar las condiciones que corresponden a los recicladores, a los waste pickers del mundo. Gracias.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you so much for your those insights. And we'd like to continue that a little bit further. So maybe we will go to you next to shed some light around waste figures and the just transition in South Africa as well. So maybe specifically around EPR, why should we ensure that EPR standards and guidelines are national, mandatory, and strengthened to integrate waste figures and other waste workers? And from your perspective, what does a just transition look like for waste pickers? So maybe over to you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. The EPR should recognize waste pickers, and it should be mandatory. It should be from government producers, not only to know that waste pickers are in the countries, but to make sure that it is being provided by waste pickers is being paid for or is being recognized. And EPR should include waste pickers in policy making and co-design of EPR programs, not only for those, but even the implementation of the programs of EPR. They need to know that they become part of everything from the start to the end. It is through policy instruments such as EPR that waste pickers can be integrated. Because if there are no policies of place, there will be no one who takes the EPR of waste pickers seriously. Again, waste pickers should be included in decision-making structures by PROs and government as part of integration. They need to know that for waste pickers to participate, it mustn't be like it's something that they need to be forced to do, but it's the right of waste pickers to take part on it and know what is going to be decided. And they are the ones who need to be integrated on. Like we can make an example, taking part in table discussions, making sure that they are included when the decision around table or being taken. The mandatory EPR should push producers to ensure collection, sorting, and recycling of waste because, like, helping with the infrastructures. If there are no infrastructures or there is no conducive conditions for waste pickers, it won't help. But if producers can make sure that they have waste pickers to make sure that they have that support, it will be good. Like having the running tap water at the landfill and the proper sanitation at the landfill as part of respecting their dignity and human rights. And just transition, shortly I can read our definition as the alliance, as it says, just until the use of plastic pollution in a way that is as fair and inclusive as possible to everyone concerned, creating decent work opportunities and leaving no one. Well, by saying we need to make sure that just transition does not become just an initiative that is not to do anything for people, but we need to see to the lives of us and the workers in the sector being improved. We need to see the empowerment of them having skills, learning how to build up their businesses or maybe to better their future, to make sure that the just transition is working for them and they benefit from the just transition. In South Africa, we have just transition framework which guides how transition to a plastic pollution-free future should look like. Because if, as I said, if there are no bylaws or things that guides the pure on how things to be done, all the instruments that we're coming up with, they will be useless. It will be something that we're just talking about, but it will be never implemented. I just suggestion to make sure that waste speakers organization get support because we need to see to it that it's not a charity thing, but it's a sustainable support because I once had about giving the PP. Three down the line, the PP is one out. And what should we do again? Should we go back again and ask for PPA? But if we got something that is tangible, that will make me grow, knowing that the 3 months down the line, know how to go back and provide for myself. Know that, okay, I can buy now. Let's make a realistic example. If I got a machine from the PROs, I will know that in 3 years' time, when you come back, I'll tell you that the machine that I will get bought me another 2 machines. I will not go back again to you and ask for another machine, but I will see how to make sure that I'm growing. Another thing on just transition is the recognition and contribution of waste pickers and our waste workers in the circular economy. We know that we've been working informally, but even when we work informally, we know that we do contribute on circular economy. And we need to know that people around our society, government, PROs, they do recognize our contribution on circular economy. We need to know that people know that everything that we do is not in vain, but is to build our economy of our different countries. Lastly, as respecting human rights of waste speakers and other waste workers by setting basic standards for their job and fair for the service they provide. We've been working for so many years as waste speakers collecting informally, and no one has ever paid us anything. I think now it is high time to look at what we're doing. Government, civil society, community at large, even the PROs, they know that we're not responsible for waste. We didn't create waste, but we are there making our livelihood better because of high rate of unemployment in our different areas or countries. But doing that, it means we need recognition somewhere. People need to know that we render a service, that we're doing it for free. But now it is a high time that it's been recognized to make sure that we get something out of the work that we're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Maddie. Thank you so much for those inputs. And we really appreciate all the work that you and Soledad do. Can we please give them one more round of applause? Okay, wonderful. So we're going to move on to our next section, which is a discussion around waste colonialism in the Global South. Our speakers for the section is Larissa Diorbe, Mageswari Sangaralingam, and Dr. Leslie Adegame will be taking us through this. So let's start off with Larissa. Larissa Diorbe is from Acción Ecológica Mexico. And let's start off with the basics and understanding of waste colonialism. So Larissa, maybe you can tell us what is waste colonialism?
Gracias. Quisiera empezar diciendo que el colonialismo de la basura es la evidencia clara de un proceso de justicia ambiental alrededor del ciclo de vida, yo diría de muerte, del plástico, ¿sí? Y esto tiene que ver con que el colonialismo de la basura consiste en el envío de miles de toneladas de desechos plásticos provenientes de países ricos con un mayor poder de consumo y con una cultura de usar y tirar a los países del sur global, los países con menos capacidad de consumo, menos capacidad económica, y que llegan con el argumento de que van a ser reciclados, ¿no? Entonces, esto ha provocado que muchos territorios, de hecho, en este caso voy a hablar de Latinoamérica, muchos de nuestros territorios hoy en día estén colapsados por plásticos, porque la producción interna a la producción interna de cada país se le suma lo que está llegando de estos países, que son de Europa. En el caso de México, el principal exportador de desechos plásticos es Estados Unidos, ¿no? México ocupa el primer lugar en Latinoamérica en recibir estos desechos, Ecuador el segundo. Y bueno, a pesar de que a nivel internacional existen instrumentos internacionales que se han diseñado como un esfuerzo para controlar el comercio transfronterizo de desechos, en el caso de los desechos plásticos, el Convenio de Basilea, por ejemplo, pues no ha sido suficiente. Y esto lo hemos podido constatar muy claramente en nuestro país, en México, porque, por ejemplo, tan solo en el 2021 recibimos 175.586 toneladas de desechos plásticos, lo que representó el 35.7% de crecimiento anual con respecto al año anterior, ¿no? Entonces, a pesar de que ese mismo año entró en vigor la enmienda de plásticos dentro del convenio de Basilea. Entonces, ¿cómo creemos nosotras que este tratado de plástico puede impulsar a terminar con este fenómeno de injusticia ambiental? Creemos firmemente que no se trata de duplicar mandatos que ya están establecidos en el convenio de Basilea, pero sí podemos rectificar, podemos presionar a los países firmantes de Basilea para que corrijan esta situación y hacer un análisis jurídico muy profundo para llenar todos los vacíos jurídicos que existen en Basilea, además de limitaciones estructurales y lagunas jurídicas. Y voy a poner aquí dos ejemplos que son los candados que Basilea tiene para para controlar, en este caso, la llegada o el comercio transfronterizo de desechos plásticos. El primero es una figura que se llama consentimiento informado, ¿sí? El proceso de consentimiento informado. Cada país tiene que estar de acuerdo en recibir esa cantidad o lo que tenga que recibir. Y el segundo es que tiene que haber la garantía de que estos desechos plásticos que están llegando tienen que tener un manejo racionalmente sustentable. Y aquí la laguna es que el reciclaje es considerado como un proceso ambientalmente racional, aun y cuando sabemos que estos plásticos tienen una gran cantidad de sustancias químicas, aditivos, tóxicos, y que llegan incluso mezclados con otros residuos, llegan sucios. Entonces es muy difícil que se reciclen. Entonces, ¿qué pasa en los territorios a los que llega? Pues normalmente son incinerados, quemados en hornos cementeros, que también ahí es un problema enorme porque queman residuos, desechos tóxicos bajo el disfraz de acciones climáticas, ¿no? Entonces ahí vemos también una dimensión climática ahí involucrada, y pues lo que podemos ver es que no existe la garantía de que estos desechos plásticos que están llegando a nuestros territorios se gestionen de manera segura, de manera que no afecte a las comunidades. Entonces, pues creemos que sí tiene que haber, si bien el borrador cero aborda este tema, lo hace supeditándose al convenio de Basilea. Entonces tendríamos que ver cómo cubrir, cómo este tratado tiene que cubrir estos vacíos y lagunas jurídicas que están en Basilea para determinar con este proceso de injusticia ambiental que es el colonialismo de la basura. Y solamente añadir que en México hicimos esta investigación en conjunto con otras investigaciones, con otras organizaciones que también hicieron esta investigación en América Latina, organizaciones que forman parte de Gaia. Y en el caso de México, estamos tratando de indagar ahora a dónde se están yendo estos residuos, porque cuando llegan, no hay registro a dónde se van, ¿sí? Entonces, esto se debe estar repitiendo en muchos países, y además que en las aduanas no hay un control sobre qué tipo de plásticos están llegando. Entonces, pues tenemos mucho trabajo por delante, tenemos mucho que analizar, que reflexionar desde el ámbito jurídico, que se tome en cuenta a las comunidades que están siendo afectadas, para que este tratado podamos impulsar que las delegadas y delegados entiendan que puede ser una oportunidad para terminar con este proceso. Muchas gracias.
All right. Thank you for sharing those reflections with us, Larissa. Hope all of you on Zoom are still with us. Hi, everyone, again. We are now going to move on to Mageswari Sangaralingam, who is from the Consumers Association of Penang, and Sahabat Alam, Friends of the Earth Malaysia. So, Mages, over to you. What are some of the ways that waste colonialism is evident in the global south, and any specific examples you can share from your part of the world?
Hello. So the global production and trade of plastic waste, it had grown tremendously over the recent decades. Yeah, all this while, China was the recipient of the world's waste. Yeah, and then they decided this is enough. So China's decided to stop importing waste in 2018. Yeah, the world was in chaos. Yeah, and it shouldn't have been. Yeah, because plastic waste from a rich and developed country, they have the capacity to manage their waste. Yeah, they should not be shifting their responsibility to developing and mostly under-resourced countries. And this is truly an injustice. Yeah, this is what we are calling waste colonialism. So what happens in the recipient countries? Much of the plastic is single use. Yeah, as what we are consuming right now, it's mostly single use and of little or no recycling value. However, it is still destined for recycling operations. Yeah, although not all plastics can be recycled. In most of our countries, it's the HDPEs and LDPEs which are recycled. Yeah, Moreover, what we saw coming into our shores were mixed and contaminated waste. So this actually burdens our water systems, yeah, because you have to wash and then it pollutes our water systems. So the waste that cannot be recycled, these are called residual waste. They are being dumped openly in Malaysia, in Indonesia, and a lot of our global south countries. Yeah, and some of it is intentionally burnt. So when the waste is burnt, as you know, the toxic fumes, it causes respiratory problems and other ailments to the neighboring communities. And some suffered from breathing difficulties, asthma, skin problems, and some of it may eventually lead to chronic illnesses like cancer. In I give you some examples. In Surabaya, Indonesia, communities were using the plastic waste, which came with paper bales, to fuel their stoves to make tofu. Yeah, that's bean curd. And dioxins were also found in eggs from chickens in the neighborhood. Yeah, the cost and burden to public health actually it far outweighs the revenue that is purportedly gained from recycling and waste trade. We also saw illegal recycling plants popping up in Malaysia, mostly by investors from China. They operate without permits. They use low-end technology and environmentally harmful methods of disposal. Yeah, now we see them increasingly starting up paper and plastic recycling plants, and they have waste incinerators in their facilities. Yeah, so again, toxic emissions from the waste incinerators. Another issue is hidden plastics. So you may not be getting plastic waste, but the waste may be coming in as paper waste, which has contaminated with plastics. There's also electrical products with plastics, textile waste, rubber, tire waste. And there is also this waste type, which is called refuse derived fuel. So all this comes in the name of recycling. Yeah, but most of it cannot be recycled. So when countries started pushing back, Malaysia, Vietnam, Indonesia, these said no more to this waste imports, they started going into countries such as Myanmar and Laos. Yeah, an investigation report had just was released last month, and they found this waste that was dumped in Myanmar comes from the West. Yeah, this is totally an environmental injustice. So that's why we've been calling for a total ban on trade in waste. Yeah, but then banning plastic waste exports without reducing plastic production will likely trigger more dumping. Yeah, and will cause toxic pollution and contribute to the climate crisis. So we view that the crisis of plastic pollution should be achieved from upstream, reducing the overall production of plastics, ban unnecessary single-use plastics, recyclable plastics, toxic polymers, and other measures to ensure the plastic crisis is tackled at its root cause. Yeah, don't make it into a waste management issue. Yeah. So lastly, no country should be made a dumping ground. Yeah, we must take responsibility of the waste that we generate. Yeah, we must end waste colonialism. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my guest, for those reflections and insights. We're going to end up the discussion on waste colonialism now, even though I'm sure we can all agree we could go on talking about this for much longer. But next up, I'd like to invite Dr. Leslie Adegame to share with us some of his insights. Dr. Leslie is from the Sustainable Research and Action for Environmental Development, which is SRADEV in Nigeria. So, Dr. Leslie, how can the Global Plastics Treaty support the end to waste colonialism in the global south?
Yeah, thank you so much. So let me just say this is the reason why we're here precisely. We need to find solutions to this global serious crisis of plastic pollution. And the global south are not part of the problem, we're not part of the crisis, but definitely we have to be part of the solution. So we're actually having this discourse, which is very important to be able to provide solution. And the plastic treaty, which is ongoing, is just one best avenue within which we can address this global issue. Let me first start with, there are two basic myths. A lot of my colleagues have talked about, the colonialism, basically. But there are myths around this whole issue, which I would like to debunk precisely, because this myth keeps on going. And we have seen that happen right here in this debate. I mean, in the early parts of this debate, which we think we can't continue to promote. For example, that waste colonialism, colonialism and its repercussion probably, to a large extent, has ended. We are still seeing quite a lot of it from the examples and statements we are hearing. So in the aspect of the plastic waste, that the global north colonialism or impact happening on the southern part is more or less like a blessing. No, this is not correct, because we have continued to see continuous dumping of waste. I give, for example, from the African setting. We've had cases of our own case of cocoa dumping waste in Nigeria. We know the case of Cote d'Ivoire. We know the case of Tunisia and so many other countries that have suffered from this continuous dumping, and it's still ongoing. With particular reference to plastic waste and how this trading can help to address this. I want to say that if you see the Global South particularly well strategically positioned with highest ambition, you'll be able to see how this can be addressed. It's because we are most impacted. And how we think this can be addressed, even though we understand some argument we see from the floor is already going against waste trade, which I see as continuous propagation of the same colonialism which we're talking about, is that the fact we have to use this very ambitious treaty to address it. The best way to go is a full ban on waste trade. And I must be very, very frank and sincere about this. If we don't have a full ban on plastic waste trade, then we have not made any intro into the solution. I say this quickly because even though we argue that the Basel Convention has taken care of quite a lot of the plastic waste, hazardous transboundary, hazardous waste trade, there are quite a lot of loopholes which we see in the Basel Convention, and a number of them were mentioned by my colleague here. The question of the exemptions around Y48 class of plastics, the refuse-derived fuel, the textiles, synthetics, the rubber waste, they are not covered. They are not covered by the Basel Convention. And this is where the Global South suffers from tremendously. So if we can strongly get a very ambitious plastic trading that totally put a full ban, then I think we will be in the right position. Full ban on plastic waste is the way to go if we must end waste colonialism, and it has to end now.
Amazing. Thank you, Dr. Leslie. And thank you to all of our panelists on that session. So thank you, Larissa, Mageswari, and Dr. Leslie. Can we give them one more round of applause, please? Okay, next on our agenda, we're going to be discussing Indigenous rights. And with us today, we have Lina Estrada Anyokazi, who is the UNEP Indigenous Peoples representative, and will be steering this conversation. So, Lina, so how are the rights of Indigenous people being impacted by the global plastics crisis? And how would you say that Indigenous science and traditional knowledge has supported and demonstrated alternatives to plastics in the first place? So over to you.
Muchísimas gracias a todos y a todas. Primero quiero decirles que mi nombre tradicional es Gusikuri, que significa planta de yuca, que crece joven y que se arranca un ciclo, ¿no? Justamente la vida, el ciclo. También soy de la Amazonía colombiana, del corazón de la Amazonía colombiana, y soy hija del tabaco, de la coca y de la yuca brava, decimos nosotros. Es importante decir que para los pueblos indígenas soportamos una carga que es desproporcionada de los impactos de la contaminación plástica. Nuestros derechos también son atropellados en cada etapa del ciclo de vida del plástico. Nuestros territorios son colonizados, nuestros líderes son asesinados y nuestras comunidades son desplazadas en nombre de las grandes empresas multinacionales para la extracción del petróleo y la consecuente producción de combustibles y, por supuesto, del plástico. Recordando los impactos que las industrias petroquímicas han tenido en nuestros territorios y los ecosistemas, quisiera citar un ejemplo de contaminación por plásticos y microplásticos en la cuenca del río Orinoco en Colombia, que es una de las cuencas más conservadas y prístinas del mundo, y donde la incidencia del hombre moderno ha sido nula. Dicho estudio científico que se realizó encontró partículas de microplásticos en nuestras aguas tomadas en diferentes partes de la cuenca, demostrándonos que aún no conocemos los impactos reales de la contaminación plástica en el mundo y en los ecosistemas. A partir de eso, entonces, debemos preguntarnos cómo ha llegado el plástico ahí. ¿Y cómo han llegado esos microplásticos? ¿Cómo es que están siendo transportados a estos sitios que son casi inaccesibles para el ser humano? Y de ser así, estas implicaciones de la contaminación plástica son inmensas y por supuesto se desbordan nuestros peores temores. También nuestros territorios y sitios sagrados son depositarios de grandes cantidades de basura plástica. Nuestros lagos se secan y se contaminan con plástico. Nuestra salud, nuestras formas de vida y nuestros usos y costumbres, gobierno propio, también se afecta. Nuestros pueblos indígenas están desapareciendo. Es así como nuestros derechos por la producción y contaminación plástica son afectados. Por otro lado, con respecto a los sistemas de conocimiento, debemos decir que hay que tener una claridad con respecto a este concepto, puesto que los conocimientos tradicionales se refieren a los conocimientos de otros grupos de comunidades locales, como pueden ser los campesinos, los afrodescendientes, las comunidades RUM u otros, pero nuestros conocimientos deben ser mencionados como sistemas de conocimiento indígena que enmarcan un conocimiento holístico y que se refiere en especial a nuestra ley de origen, que es que se refiere a la palabra de vida y que es la palabra con la que se creó el mundo, con la que se organizó el territorio y dio orden a todas las cosas, cómo deben acomodarse. Gracias.
Thank you so much, Lena. I'm very grateful for your perspectives today. We are going to move on to the next section of our discussion, which is around bold solutions. And this segment will be anchored by Alejandra Fada, Tricia Farelli, and Jacob Atapa. So we're going to just try and get to the basics and understand what are bold solutions first. So with that, I'd like to invite Jacob. Jacob is from the Green Africa Youth Organization in Ghana. So Jacob, maybe you could tell us what exactly are fold solutions and why do we need to avoid them in the global plastic treaty conversations?
Thank you very much, Niven, and hello, everybody. Well, as the name suggests, first of all, fold solutions are the actions or the things that poses as solutions, but in reality, take away attention from what the real problem is and instead transfers the burden to something else. So a very classic example is on the minds of almost everybody here is incineration. And so further, when the conversation expands, I'll explain more. But essentially, that's what false solutions are. They take away the focus from what the real problem is. They transfer it. And so in the Global Plastics Treaty, the real problem that civil society organizations and other well-meaning actors have been calling for is that we're producing plastics at very unsustainable levels. And that is what the problem is. So any solution that is proposed by anybody that does not address the root of the problem, which is the unsustainable levels of plastic production, can and will be classified as a false solution. The ones that we've seen during INT1, INT2, and even at INT3 that are often referred to by some member states who want to divert attention. Number one is incineration. And incineration is a false solution because it perpetuates what we like to call a linear economy. Because the world is gearing towards a place where we like to be resource efficient. When you look at SDG 12, it talks about responsible consumption and production. And any level of production or consumption that does not fuel circularity in the right sense is a false solution. So incineration is the burning or the combustion of a lot of materials, often with the aim of eradicating the problem. But then the truth is that it brings out more problems. For example, it produces ash, it produces wastewater that is often in many times disposed of in very, very bad manners. And that even creates more problem for the environment, as opposed to the real problem, which is the unsustainable levels of plastic production. The second thing is waste to energy plants that a lot of people preach about. The idea is that you can put a lot of materials into one plant and then some way magically turn it into energy. The problem with that particular situation or instance is that you often require even more energy to fuel that process than the energy that you even get out of it. And so you are having a loss of energy in the end, or a net loss of energy in the end. And it's also particularly problematic because it still fuels the use and dispose narrative that we're trying to combat, because we need to all move to a point where we embrace circularity. And when I speak of circularity, I mean the circulation of products and not material. And so we don't want people to circulate toxic plastics. We don't want people to circulate toxic polymers or polymers of concern. What you want them to do is circulate things that agree with the environment and do not pose any threats whatsoever. So by and large, in the plastics treaty, these are the false solutions, and we need to avoid them because it takes away the focus from the problem, which is the levels at which the globe is producing plastics. And if you do not take care, would keep producing more plastics and keep thinking that the problem is waste management, but that is not the problem. The problem is we are producing too many plastics, and we are even recycling only about 10%, according to UNEP. And so you know that circularity or circular economy with specific respect to recycling is not the solution. Waste management is not the solution. We need to tackle the problem from the source, which is the drastic cuts in plastic production globally. Thank you very much, Niven.
Thank you, Jacob. Really appreciate those insights. And just to reiterate, false solutions are not solving the problem. And the only way to do it is a cut in production. But we're going to talk a little bit more about other false solutions. And I'd like to go next to Alejandra. So Alejandra Parra is from the Gaia Latin America and Caribbean team. So Ale, we've been hearing a lot about plastic credits as the INC conversations have progressed. Why are plastic credits a false solution?
Mucho nivel. Voy a hablar en llano. Los créditos de plástico son también una falsa solución porque, como dijo acá el compañero, no abordan la raíz del problema y intentan aparentar una solución que en verdad no está. Y es un sistema que se está proponiendo, de hecho, como un método de control de la contaminación por plásticos en este proceso del Tratado Global. Ha sido propuesto por el sector privado, fundamentalmente. Afortunadamente no hemos escuchado de gobiernos que lo estén proponiendo también. Esperamos que no suceda. Y es una fórmula que imita el sistema de bonos de carbono, que es un sistema que está instalado desde hace muchos años ya que viene de los convenios internacionales del cambio climático y que en el fondo se traduce en que alguien que contamina mucho le paga a alguien que contamina poco para que siga contaminando poco y de esa manera esa persona le entrega bonos que le permiten al contaminador, al gran contaminador, seguir contaminando en esas grandes cantidades. Es como si una persona fumadora le pagara a una persona no fumadora para que continúe sin fumar y así se da permiso para seguir fumando. Es más o menos esa la forma en que funcionan los créditos de carbono. Y los créditos de carbono hasta el día de hoy sabemos muy bien que no han aportado absolutamente nada a reducir las emisiones de gases de efecto invernadero y que al contrario estos gases han aumentado. Y un esquema similar es el que se propone con los créditos de plástico, donde las grandes corporaciones ofrecen dinero a comunidades, a trabajadores, incluso a recicladores de base, para que recojan basura plástica de las playas, de los ambientes naturales, y según la cantidad de basura plástica que recogen, eso le permite acceder a créditos a los productores de plástico para poder seguir produciendo es la misma cantidad de plástico que producen actualmente o incluso más, porque la verdad es que como es un mercado que además no está regulado, esto significa que los marcos bajo el que funciona son totalmente difusos y no sabemos en el fondo si esos créditos van a significar que los grandes contaminadores y productores de plástico van a seguir produciendo la misma cantidad o les va a permitir incluso aumentar la cantidad de producción frente a los niveles que existen hoy en día. Si es que claramente es una falsa solución, es un engaño, es un espejismo que puede verse de lejos atractivo, pero que cuando uno se acerca ve que finalmente no es nada concreto y al contrario es un engaño y es un abuso también de los trabajadores, de las comunidades que pueden servir en el fondo a los fines de las grandes empresas a cambio de la entrega de recursos económicos y finalmente es un aprovechamiento de las grandes industrias productoras de plástico de los sectores más vulnerables de la sociedad y se aprovechan de sus necesidades económicas para ofrecerles estos recursos que finalmente les van a servir para poder seguir siendo los grandes contaminadores del mundo. Así es que es un sistema que hay que rechazar de plano y denunciar cada vez que se ofrezca como una solución al problema de la crisis de los plásticos.
Thank you, Ale. Thank you for sharing those perspectives with us. Joining us now is Tricia Bareilly of the Scientists Coalition. So, Tricia, can you tell us a little bit about bioplastics and why they are a full solution?
Thanks, Kia ora koutou. Good to see you, Mary Tokuigwa. I'm from a colonial settler descent from Aotearoa, New Zealand, so I'm speaking today on behalf of the Scientists Coalition, but at times I'll probably slip into my role in the Pacific and the research I've done there in my Aotearoa. So bioplastics, why are they a whole solution? Again, exactly as we've heard from our speakers, they do detract attention away from aggregate global plastic reduction is exactly what we're all trying to head towards in these treaty negotiations. And so when we start talking more and more about bioplastics production, we start talking less and less about global plastics production. Bioplastics are also a very complicated term. There are so many different definitions around these. And unfortunately, they're quite often touted as better plastics. That is not necessarily true. And so we have the broader category of bioplastics, but then underneath that umbrella term, we have bio-based plastics, which could include fossil fuel-based feedstocks combined with biomass feedstocks. And then we also have biodegradables, and the component of those are compostables. And there are questions about whether or not those compostables are indeed compostables. Some of those are quite difficult to compost, and there are often very few plants available in municipalities to truly biodegrade, compost those plastics. And then we wonder what's left in those residuals. I had residuals talked about before, because new research has shown that there are, in fact, more additives in bioplastics than fossil fuel-based plastics. And so then if they do, in fact, biodegrade into our compost and therefore into our food systems, there are questions about food sovereignty and food safety. There's also questions too about where that biomass comes from. And we don't want to be displacing people, and we don't want to be displacing our food sources, particularly if it's for the production of bioplastic for single-use plastics, and certainly not non-essential plastics. So the Scientist Coalition are really interested in the term essential, which use is considered as necessary for health and safety or other highly important purposes, and for which alternatives are not yet established. So we recognise also just transition, and we recognise there are transitional phases. Some bioplastics may be a transitional phase as we move away from those to perhaps zero waste, zero plastic-free packaging systems and so on. But they certainly may not be the end game. Again, it detracts attention and investment away from global plastic production reduction. I'd also just want to talk about sort of the full life cycle of those plastics, and the need for very, very careful assessment, standards, transparency, labeling, so that we actually know what these things are, how we can safely use them, and how they can be truly safely and sustainably dealt with, to ensure that they are in fact circular. And if we think about circular as actually regenerative and restorative, I think you heard that mentioned earlier too, that we need to ensure that they are, and it's replenishing and nourishing Mother Earth, rather than contaminating with microplastics and chemicals. So I guess my final note here really is that there needs to be more standards around this. They need to be very rigorously tested, and we're recommending from the Scientist Coalition they be tested for safety, which was human health, but also all health, for sustainability, in this broader sense, for equity and justice as well, and economics and so forth, and for transparency, so safety, sustainability, essentiality, and transparency. Thank you. Kia ora.
Thank you, Tricia. Thank you, Tricia, for sharing those insights with us, and thank you to all of our panelists talking about full solutions. So thank you, Tricia, Jacob, Ali, really appreciate that. We have one last section that we're going to go through, and it is around human rights. And with us today, we have Olivia Tamon from the Foundation for Environment and Development in Cameroon. So, Olivia, how can global plastic production reduction protect human health, human rights, and the environment?
Thank you very much for that great question. All of us agree here from the former speakers that when we want to talk about plastic pollution, it is extremely important for us to address the aspects of human rights. The former speakers have talked a lot about addressing plastic pollution from the root causes, which I agree entirely, that we have to look at the root causes of plastic pollution, from production to extraction, to production, to importation and distribution in our respective countries. We know very well the impacts of plastic pollution on the fundamental human rights of citizens. We know that it impacts considerably on the human rights of vulnerable persons, especially women, children, waste speakers, indigenous people. We know that very well. And so it is extremely important for us to talking about plastic pollution to address human rights principles, especially in the treaty that we are negotiating here in Nairobi. So when we talk about human rights, we talk about the procedural rights. We also think about substantive rights, procedural rights such as access to information, to participation, access to justice. We think about fundamental human rights, the rights to life, it is greatly impacted. We've had cases as a legal practitioner, we've had to address cases of plastic pollution that has led to deaths. We also know about the right to health, the right to a safe, clean, and sustainable environment, which is very important. Protecting the environment and the aquatic life, animal life is extremely important. We also know that the right to safe drinking water. We've had a lot of cases where plastic pollution has actually polluted our rivers, our streams in our communities across the global south. It is seen everywhere. Plastic pollution everywhere. So these rights are extremely important and fundamental to this discussion. I also think that it's very important talking about the plastic treaty, where we have states as duty bearers. Is extremely important for us also to address the accountability of corporations as far as plastic pollution is concerned. States being duty bearers, what does this mean? It means that they have to take into consideration, for example, the United Nations Basic Principles on Human Rights that touch on the accountability for corporations. They also have to think about due diligence, which is extremely important, because at the end of the day, when human rights are affected, they have to start looking at states that have ratified treaties and also the corporations. And so if states do not take into account these principles, it will become extremely difficult for the corporations to be held to account. So human rights is extremely very vital and important in this discussion for us to address it. We've had so many cases in the organization where I work in that we've been addressing with regards to plastic pollution, holding corporations such as Milk to account for their environmental footprints. We've also had for brewing companies that produce soft drinks and water, and they use plastic products to do this. We see it everywhere in our communities. So I think it's extremely important for us to address these human rights issues. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Thank you, Olivia. And I'm sure you can all agree, wow, what an amazing group that we've got here. So what an amazing panel. Can we give them one more round of applause? Okay, so at this stage, we'd like to open up for some Q&A. So I know we have folks on Zoom. Hi again, we still know you're there. And we have folks in the audience. So yeah, we'd like to open up for Q&A. We have colleagues in the room who are on Zoom and can help facilitate the conversation with the Zoom participants as well. So just because you guys are visible, you have preference. Anyone, any questions from the audience here? Too much of information at once. Anything on Zoom? Any questions on Zoom? Yes, we have a question in the audience. Thank you. Yeah, I think so.
So thank you very much. It was really impressive to listen to all of you. A fantastic organization of the panel, by the way. I'm very grateful that you've been talking about all these false solutions. But then if we can focus now on the solutions, which ones are they? We've been talking, of course, about the reduction of the plastics. How can we do that in a way that respects the human rights and fair, just transition?
Thank you. Right, fantastic question to start off with. Any takers from the panel? Jacob, thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. And I think the first thing we need to look at, like we've already said, is global emission cuts. Then that presents the question, if we stop producing as much plastics, what is going to replace that? The simple solution is to prioritize reuse and refill systems. The reason why this is important is because it enables the circularity I spoke about, the circularity of products, not materials. And so that way you have products that are sustainable, that are environmentally friendly within a circular loop. Let's just take it. Thank you. Within a circular loop. And that way you do not hurt the environment, you do not hurt human health. Because the research shows that there's a lot of toxic materials, toxic chemicals that are in plastics. So if we take out the plastics entirely, that means that the replacement has to be something that is sustainable. And that then gives us the opportunity to rethink systems and redesign products. And that is a simple solution. While we're cutting down on global plastic production, we're also prioritizing reuse and refill systems to fill the gap that the cuts in global plastic production presents as well. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Jacob. Maybe while we wait for any other questions on Zoom, any other of our panelists has any? Maddie, over to you.
I'd like to echo on what my brother is saying. We can use a refill and reuse system to minimize or to cut off the plastic that is problematic in the materials that we do. For an example, there are some facial products that are made of plastic, and there are facial products that are made of sand. That means it is possible for us to replace plastic particles with the sand in the products that are for facial products. Another thing is for reuse things in our houses. We can make a simple mistake. If you have a glass bottle that in your bathroom you can use for your toothbrushes to put them neatly and hygienically, it can be part of being reused. There is no need to look for things that will complicate things, but the things that are practically in our hands, we can use them. Thank you very much.
So we've got a few more people on the panel that wants to just add to this first question, and then we'll go to our question on Zoom. So Lina, I'll pass to you.
Sí, a ver, yo creo que lo primero que hay que hacer es cambiar un modelo de consumo, porque nosotros no podemos cambiar un modelo extractivista por otro modelo extractivista. Lo que tenemos que hacer es cambiar el pensamiento. Y siempre lo que vemos es que estamos pensando en economías grandes y masificadas. ¿Por qué no volvemos a lo propio y a lo local, que es como funcionaba antes y es como deberíamos de seguir funcionando si es que queremos que la naturaleza perviva y el medio ambiente se pueda recuperar? En ese sentido, por ejemplo, nosotros como pueblos indígenas tenemos muchas opciones que involucran a el uso, la administración de los recursos naturales y que es estable, ¿no? Y uno pone ejemplos, hablando de tecnología. Tenemos todavía acueductos en el mundo que funcionan y que fueron construidos por pueblos indígenas hace cientos y cientos de años y que están aún en funcionamiento con cero plástico, porque si vamos a hablar de acueducto, se utiliza el plástico. Tenemos sistemas de agricultura que son milenarios y que no utilizan ningún medio de destrucción de la naturaleza. Entonces sí tenemos mucho como nosotros que aportar, pero hay que volver a lo propio y a lo local. Gracias.
Thank you. We have a few questions coming in, but Ale, maybe I can just for a minute and then we'll go on to Leslie and then onto Zoom.
Sí, muy brevemente y totalmente de acuerdo con lo que dice Elena y alineada con eso también. Hay que considerar que la crisis de los plásticos no es una crisis aislada de las otras crisis ambientales, de biodiversidad, de la crisis climática, y que la verdad es que todas estas crisis ambientales tienen un origen en común y que es este sistema económico, capitalista y globalizado, que intenta siempre hacer crecer las economías permanentemente como si eso fuera una fuente de beneficios para toda la sociedad de manera transversal, cosa que no es así, es un sistema que simplemente busca enriquecer a unos pocos que están por encima y que usan los territorios y las personas que están por debajo. Entonces, la solución a esta crisis de los plásticos tiene mucho que ver con lo que decía Elena, tiene mucho que ver con soluciones del estilo basura cero, donde el sistema de producción y consumo tiene que dejar de ser lineal, ¿cierto? Porque no vivimos en un planeta infinito, el planeta tiene capacidad limitada para absorber la contaminación y para reproducir los bienes naturales comunes renovables que se están extrayendo a tasas que el planeta no puede volver a generar. Entonces hay que cambiar ese sistema que hoy en día es lineal por un sistema que sea cíclico, que funcione como funciona la naturaleza. La naturaleza funciona en ciclos. Todo lo que tiene que ver con los seres vivos funciona en ciclos. Y así también tiene que funcionar nuestros sistemas económicos, también para resolver las necesidades de las personas que viven en los territorios donde se extraen los bienes naturales comunes y que estos además sean extraídos para resolver reales necesidades y no para enriquecer los bolsillos de la gente que está en los sectores más poderosos de la sociedad.
Thank you, Ale. And we're going to go to Dr. Leslie, and then we have a question by Grove on Zoom before we close out. So, Dr. Leslie.
Thank you so much. Mine is just a very brief one to say that why are we talking about plastics? What's the problem we have with plastics? Is as it relates to environment and health. And that's the point my colleague mentioned there in terms of the toxicity of plastics. This is still why it's this one of the reasons why we're here as under this global treaty to be able to clearly understand and define the chemicals of concerns, the polymer and the problematic, plastics. Once we can come to a very clear understanding of this, then we already have a clear way, a solution. But I think strongly that our reduction effort should now be geared towards the upstream sector. It seems so much attention is towards the downstream, PR and all these other frameworks. But if we can concentrate, for example, talking about the waste trade, if we can concentrate on the upstream sector, where we can actually obtain a reduction in the amount of plastic that is produced, then I think we'll be really be having a solution for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Leslie. So we running out of time, but we do want to take one more question from Zoom, and this is a question from Grove Harris. So, how far away is the meeting from adopting any of these positions, and is reminding states of their human rights responsibilities effective in reining in corporate interests? So the meeting so far, how's it been going from adopting any of these positions, reminding states of human rights? Okay, Ale?
Sí, hay que explicar tal vez un poco que el tratado está en plena negociación. Hay en estos momentos un borrador cero, que es un documento que tiene opciones de objetivos, opciones de medidas de implementación, opciones de mecanismos de financiamiento, que los países ahora en esta reunión van a empezar a decantar por cuál opción se inclina. Y la verdad es que las opciones entregan muchas alternativas de cómo podría terminar resultando este tratado. Y hay países que tienen posiciones más progresistas, que están por un abordaje de ciclo de vida completo, que han llamado a tener los derechos humanos como un tema central a proteger, pero otros estados que no quieren que se aborde el ciclo de vida completo, que quieren que se considere solo el manejo de residuos, que no les interesa para nada la participación de la ciudadanía ni los derechos humanos. Entonces hay ahí una pugna entre estas posiciones y por supuesto también posiciones intermedias. Así es que la verdad es que en estos momentos yo diría que podemos adelantarnos a decir cómo va a terminar siendo este tratado, pero sí que hay posibilidades todavía de que se aborden los temas de manera concreta y se resuelva de raíz esta problemática, pero para eso necesitamos la concurrencia de todas y todos nosotros, sobre todo de la ciudadanía organizada, movilizada, que defiende los derechos humanos y los derechos de la naturaleza, los derechos de los pueblos indígenas, para que tengamos una voz mucho más poderosa que la voz de la industria, de los sectores privados, que son los que sabemos que influencian a estos países para que tengan estas posiciones contrarias a lo que necesitamos que este tratado, contenga para resolver de raíz este problema.
Okay, thank you, Ale. We have further contributions, so I'll pass it on to Saleh and then to Larissa.
Con respecto a la pregunta que se hizo recién, creo que la única forma de llegar a algo concreto es, primero que nada, asumir que este no es solamente un tema de la industria o las petroquímicas, sino que también es un tema de nosotros como seres humanos, porque yo hago solamente una pregunta para que entendamos qué tan responsables somos todos de todo lo que está pasando, cuántos de todos nosotros tiene cuántos pantalones, cuántos zapatos, cuánta polera, cuántos de nosotros cambia constantemente el celular, cuántos de nosotros compra bebida desechable, cuántos de nosotros va al supermercado y usa un montón de bolsas. O sea, esto tiene que ver con una visión global, no solamente desde este tratado, sino de cómo nosotros también nos hacemos cargo de este cambio de paradigma, cómo creamos conciencia a través de nuestras formas de actuar y de nuestra forma de consumir. Aseguro que todos nosotros en la maleta que trajimos ahora traemos por lo menos unas 7 mudas de ropa. Eso es lo que tiene que cambiar. El tirar y comprar es parte del cambio también. No es solamente hacer cargo y responsable a los que han sido responsables de esta contaminación tan tremenda y tan terrible, porque realmente no nos hicimos cargo antes, sino que también cómo nos hacemos cargo hoy día nosotros para hacer este cambio de paradigma. Y sobre todo para que este tratado se cumpla, lo que acaba de decir Ale. No solamente tiene que estar la sociedad civil activa, sino que tiene que estar toda la sociedad que no está activa. Y esto no está pasando en ningún territorio popular. Esto no está pasando en Nairobi, acá en Andorra. Esto está pasando aquí en UNED. Esto tiene que moverse a los territorios, esto tiene que moverse a las bases, esto tiene que contarse a la gente común y corriente, porque generalmente estos temas se tratan a nivel elitista. Son los intelectuales, son los gobernadores, son los poderosos, son los empresarios, pero ¿qué pasa con el territorio que no tiene idea que hoy día aquí hay un tratado de plástico? ¿Qué pasa con los territorios donde no tienen idea que estamos muriéndonos por los plásticos? Esto tiene que bajar. Cuando eso baje, van a haber varios cambios. Y sobre todo, los delegados, nuestros diplomáticos, se van a ver obligados y presionados por nuestra sociedad. Pero mientras tanto, nosotros creamos que somos la luz y la voz de los demás, creo que esto no va a suceder. Y por último, para terminar con respecto a la transición justa, justamente para que esto pueda ser realmente vinculante, no hay que olvidarse de todos los actores. Entender que el cambio de paradigma con respecto a los plásticos no va a ser mañana. Se va a escribir un tratado, sí, se va a firmar un tratado, sí, pero esto va a pasar muchos años para que los plásticos salgan de los territorios, para que salgan del comercio, para que dejen de contaminar donde hoy día están enterrados. Y eso también tiene que pensar la sociedad civil activa, ambientalista, que hay consecuencias detrás de esto. Hay víctimas que hemos sido retiradas y echadas de nuestros territorios a través de estos microbasurales, de los basurales en sí, de los rellenos sanitarios, porque el relleno sanitario no está en un barrio alto, el relleno sanitario está en las poblaciones donde nosotros vivimos. Entonces, ojo con la forma en que se dirigen, con la forma en que determinan posiciones. Las posiciones tienen que ser realmente humanitarias, de derechos humanos y tomar en cuenta a todos los actores que van a salir perjudicados de estos procesos.
No solamente es el medio, el tema del planeta, la Tierra y los seres vivos que están en ella, sino que también hay un montón de gente víctima de esto, nuestros pueblos indígenas, pero también los waste pickers, que hemos sido los únicos que hemos estado en primera línea recuperando un material que nadie se atrevió a recuperarlo, que nosotros le dimos un valor a algo que nadie le quiso dar un valor y que hoy día nos sentimos amenazados, no porque se acaben los plásticos, sino porque estamos quedando fuera de un proceso de transición donde creemos que debe ser vinculante, obligatorio, donde ustedes tienen que defender nuestros derechos, porque nosotros ya estamos haciendo la pega. Ahora a ustedes les toca poner la tarea intelectual, los documentos necesarios, hacer estudios con nosotros, darse cuenta que realmente la contaminación por plástico en la primera línea está matando de cáncer, está matando de fibrosis pulmonares a nuestros compañeros y problemas renales bastante graves, aparte de cáncer a la piel. Entonces, yo creo que también los discursos deben ser alineados a la realidad que tenemos. Esto no se va a cambiar mañana. Hemos visto miles de tratados, 28 COP. ¿Y quién fiscaliza? ¿Quién regulariza? ¿Seguiremos haciendo esto o nos hacemos cargo también nosotros de lo que está pasando? Gracias.
Gracias. Coincido con las compañeras totalmente. Y bueno, el mandato que originó este tratado fue muy ambicioso en cuanto al tiempo. Realmente tenemos que tener ya un texto final a finales del 2024, ya, para que el 2025 se lleve a cabo una asamblea plenipotenciaria, se llama así, y que se inicie la firma de esto. O sea, que tenemos muy poco tiempo para poder incidir. Y bueno, desde aquí hacemos una invitación a todas y cada una de las personas para que se involucren en sus países, que revisen cuáles son las posiciones que están aquí manifestando sus países y participen en el proceso de construcción de posición de su país. El acuerdo de Escazú mandata tenemos el derecho de participar en los procesos internacionales cuando tiene que ver cuestiones de cuidado del medio ambiente y la salud. Entonces, busquemos a nuestros delegados, a los que son los responsables de la política exterior, de salud, de ambiente en nuestros países y que nos interesa participar, ¿sí? Para lograr posiciones en nuestro país que protejan los derechos humanos y que protejan la salud humana y la de los ecosistemas. Gracias.
Sí, miren, creo que lo que es más importante en cualquier tratado es el respeto a los derechos humanos, que es el respeto a la vida misma. Nosotros como pueblos indígenas, por ejemplo, estamos en la primera línea de toda esta problemática porque estamos desde el momento en que se extraen los recursos naturales en nuestros territorios hasta el punto final son todos los botaderos y recibimos todos los residuos en nuestros territorios, en nuestros ríos, en nuestros aires. Entonces, no hay que hablar solamente de derechos humanos, estamos haciendo un trabajo profundamente fuerte para que también sean incluidos los derechos de los pueblos indígenas. Porque esto incluye también el respeto a nuestros sitios sagrados, a nuestra espiritualidad, a nuestros abuelos y a nuestras abuelas y a nuestros conocimientos. Entonces, si no están incluidos los derechos de los pueblos indígenas como con esa especificidad, yo creo que no vamos a poder hablar de que hay una transición justa, porque una transición justa tiene que incluirnos a nosotros que ya tenemos unos derechos adquiridos históricamente. Gracias.
Sorry, everyone. There's a lot more conversation talking about, but maybe we can continue in the room. just one-on-one. But thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you to our online audience for staying with us, and all of everyone here that's joined us. Thank you so much. Thank you to our interpreters online for being with us. Hopefully you will walk away from this event with some new insights. And again, to highlight our message is that we did not start the plastic crisis, but together we can end it. Thank you so much for joining us. Goodbye.